Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your most complex sources and extract the essential game-changing knowledge you need.
Today, we are undertaking a truly fascinating mission.
We're bridging the gap between, deep mental practice, what you might call spiritual or psychological work, and hard, measurable clinical biology.
And this isn't just theory, we're looking at the actual neural and molecular blueprint of human transformation.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The core source material we've been diving into is, well, it's a comprehensive multimodal observational study.
The full title is Neural and Molecular Changes During a Mind-Body Reconceptualization, Meditation, and Open-Label Placebo Healing Intervention.
It's a mouthful.
It is, but it's an incredibly rich document because it tracks the systemic, measurable biological changes triggered by just one intensive, structured week of mind-body training.
A single week. That's the hook for me. The sheer speed and the breadth of the systemic shifts are what make the study so powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to unpack this stack of multimodal data.
And when we say multimodal, we really mean it. We're talking about deep functional brain imaging using fMRI.
Whole plasma proteomics, measuring thousands and thousands of proteins,
Metabolomics, profiling the body's entire chemical fingerprint.
and even analyzing microRNA carried in exosomes, which are, these tiny little vesicles that are essentially communication packets floating between your cells.
So we're going to trace the transformation from the largest scale, like the operating system of the brain, all the way down to the smallest molecular switches and communication pathways.
The goal really is to reveal the precise neural circuits and the molecular cascades that, that underpin real transformation.
Okay, so who were the subjects here?
The study focused on 20 healthy adults, 14 female, 6 male, with an average age of about 46.
And they were measured rigorously before and after this intensive 7-day retreat, right?
Exactly. And they were split, which is important. Half were total novices to meditation, and the other half were already advanced practitioners.
No, that's a great set.
It is. It lets us see both the acute changes from the retreat itself and, the underlying foundation that's built by long-term practice.
Okay, let's unpack this setup. Before we even get to the results, which are incredible, we have to understand the input. What exactly did they do for 7 days?
So the intervention was, it was highly structured, and it was designed to be synergistic.
What do you mean when you say mind-body intervention? What does that term actually cover?
That's a good question. Basically, we mean structured practices that harness the interaction between psychological processes, so your beliefs, your attention, your emotions, and your physiological systems. The goal is health improvement.
Okay, so it's deliberate, not just, going on a relaxing vacation.
Not at all. The total intervention time across the 7 days was, get this, 40.8 hours. And it blended 3 distinct components, each targeting a different level of consciousness and belief structure.
40 hours, so this was a full-time job for a week.
Pretty much.
So it wasn't just sitting quietly. It was a targeted, multi-pronged attack on the status quo. Let's start with the intellectual component, the framework they called reconceptualization. This took up 25 hours. That's the biggest chunk of time.
Right. And reconceptualization is all about the conscious, discursive alteration of core beliefs.
Discursive, meaning using language and logic.
Exactly. It's essentially reprogramming the high-level psychological software.
Yeah.
Participants went through 25 hours of lectures designed to shift their relationship with their body and with reality itself.
Okay, so what were they being taught? What were the core tenets?
The lectures focused intensely on 3 core ideas, really. First, a deep dive into the body's powerful, inherent self-healing abilities, moving away from the idea that healing has to come from an external source.
Right, empowering the individual.
Yes. Second, the mind's profound capacity to shape your lived reality. The idea that perception isn't passive, it's an active construction based on your expectations.
Okay, and the third?
The healing power that comes from present-centeredness. This is the idea that when you truly drop the narrative of past pain or future fear, your biological system can allocate all its resources optimally, right here in the current moment.
So this first component is basically providing the intellectual permission structure. It gives the brain a new story to tell itself about its own potential.
A new story, that's a perfect way to put it. And the sources note that this isn't just, soft psychology.
Right, there's a clinical basis for this.
There is. Prior randomized controlled trials have shown that reconceptualization alone, like, for example, teaching people to view pain as a plastic brain output rather than fixed tissue damage, can reduce pain significantly more than a simple placebo or even usual medical treatment.
Wow. So just changing the story changes the pain.
It changes the experience. Reconceptualization changes that foundational conscious expectation. We can call it the high-level prior, and we'll come back to that idea later. But it prepares the psychological landscape for everything else.
Okay, so after you've restructured the intellect, what comes next is the physical and attentional work. Meditation. 33 hours of practice running alongside the lectures.
Right. And the meditation was guided, using techniques from Kundalini practices. This involves what the sources call a willful yet non-discursive alteration of consciousness.
Okay, non-discursive, so not using words this time.
Exactly. It's not thinking about healing, it's being in a state that's conducive to it. The practice was intense. Conscious meta-awareness, controlled breathing, and slow, focused, interoceptive attention.
Let's break down interoceptive attention. I think that's a term a lot of people might not know.
Sure. Interoception is simply your sense of the internal state of your body, your heartbeat, your gut, tension, heat, that kind of thing.
The stuff we usually ignore unless it's screaming at us.
Precisely. This practice directs your attention inward, deliberately focusing on subtle sensations, particularly along the midline of the body, like the heart or the space between your eyebrows.
And what was the instruction? Just feel it.
The instruction was crucial. It was to sustain a heart-centered state, devoid of thinking or judgment, and to focus awareness on a void.
Okay, that sounds like a very sophisticated mental maneuver. You're trying to be highly aware of the internal sensory data,
The interoceptive inputs, yeah.
but you're simultaneously cultivating a consciousness that's free of evaluation or narrative or judgment. It's awareness without the self-referential filter.
You've nailed it. That's the whole game. It's the engine for suppressing that internal monologue, the default mode network, while forcing a heightened awareness of the present moment's sensory input. It's the mechanism for making the body's data, rather than the mind's predictions, the primary input.
Okay, so we have the intellectual reprogramming, the attentional training. Now, the third component is the one that really stretches the boundaries of conventional science. Open-label placebo healing rituals. 5 hours of this, what does that even mean?
Yes. This is where the conscious awareness intersects with the unconscious biological mechanisms. The ritual involved 6 to 8 healers practicing loving-kindness and compassion meditation, focused intently on one Healy.
A Healy, meaning one of the participants.
Correct. And crucially, the mechanism was never concealed from them. It was open label. They were told the possibility of healing existed because of the ritual.
So they knew it wasn't a drug. They knew it was a ritual.
Exactly. It's similar to how effective open-label placebos are presented in clinical trials. You know it's a placebo, but the context and the expectation are structured to promote a real physiological response.
So the power isn't in the deception. It's in the context and expectation. The fact that multiple people are focusing on you with, loving kindness, that combined with the new belief system from the lectures might create a powerful conscious expectation that overrides negative biological priors.
That's the hypothesis. This component operates through conscious awareness, but it's designed to trigger unconscious biological action. Specifically, as we'll see, the body's natural opioid systems.
It's a truly synergistic design. You've got the conscious belief change, the non-discursive attention training, and then this potent ritual to activate a positive biological expectation.
Right, and given the complexity of that input, the measurement strategy had to be equally complex.
It had to be. We're talking about a multimodal analysis that goes way beyond a simple psychological questionnaire.
The depth of this measurement is why the study is so significant. They committed to a multimodal strategy to capture systemic changes at every level, all at the same time.
So let's just review those layers, because this is the foundation for all the data we're about to discuss.
Okay, so starting at the macro level, neural analysis. They used bold fMRI during resting state and critically during the meditation practice itself.
Oh, that's cool. So not just before and after, but while they were doing it.
Yes, they were looking to see if the network structure of the brain changed, not just when the brain was resting, but how it functioned when attempting that difficult non-discursive state.
Okay. Then moving down into the body systems. The molecular and systemic analysis was, it was intense.
Incredibly so. We are talking about whole plasma analysis. First, proteomics, where they identified and quantified 7,596 distinct protein targets floating in the blood.
And proteins regulate everything, right? Immunity, nerve repair, everything.
Everything. Then there was metabolomics, profiling 640 different metabolites. These are the small molecules that are the downstream products of cellular processes. They tell us what fuel the body is burning and what stress products are being generated.
And then there's the communications layer, the exosome-specific microRNA transcriptomics.
Right. Think of exosomes as sealed, lipid-wrapped envelopes sent from one cell to another.
Like intercellular mail.
Perfect analogy. They carry instructions, particularly small snippets of RNA. By analyzing the microRNA transcripts only within these circulating exosomes, the researchers were essentially intercepting the private mail system of the cells. It tells us what cellular instructions are being broadcast system-wide after the intervention.
And finally, the functional assays. This is the part I love. They didn't just measure what was there, they tested what the plasma did.
This is a beautiful piece of experimental design. They took the participants' pre- and post-intervention plasma, and they applied it to laboratory cultured cells.
So they're testing its biological activity.
Precisely. They used a neurite growth assay on neuroendocrine cells to see if the plasma had acquired factors that actively promote nerve cell growth. And they used real-time metabolism cellular assays to see how that same plasma influenced the energy consumption preferences of human neuroblastoma cells.
This moves the finding from just correlation to actual functional action. The plasma itself became biologically active in a new way.
It did. So this comprehensive layered approach means that if the results hold up, we can't just dismiss them as feeling better or stress reduction. We have hard biological mechanisms across the entire system.
So let's start at the top, the brain. The study begins with subjective confirmation, right? You can't claim there was a transformation if the participants don't actually feel a change in their consciousness.
Precisely. The subjective data is what validates the rest of it. Participants reported significantly increased scores on the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, or MEQ, following the intervention.
So they felt different.
Measurably so. The mean score went from 2.37 pre-intervention to 3.02 post-intervention, which is a statistically significant deepening of the meditative state. It means the retreat successfully induced a shift toward, transcendent, mystical-type experiences.
And that subjective shift is then instantly corroborated by the objective rewiring of the brain's largest, most important networks. The core finding is what they call the disruption of self-reference.
Yes, and it targets the two networks that essentially define our day-to-day experience of being us.
The default mode network, DMN, and the salience network.
SS. The DMN is the brain's baseline. It's what activates when we're thinking about ourselves, judging others, dwelling on the past, or worrying about the future. It's the engine of self-referential thought and internal narrative.
It's the inner critic, the daydreamer, the planner.
Yeah.
It's all the DMN.
Right. And following the intervention, meditation significantly decreased the functional connectivity within the DMN.
Meaning the different parts of that network stopped talking to each other as much.
They did. This reduction in the network's internal communication was incredibly strong, a p-value of 0.00009, a signal that was statistically almost impossible to ignore.
So the inner voice, that incessant self-loop, it quieted down profoundly, which aligns perfectly with the goal of the meditation practice, cultivating a state devoid of thinking or judgment.
And this pattern was mirrored in the salience network, SN. The SN is our brain's urgent attention filter. It's the alarm system that's constantly monitoring internal and external stimuli, deciding what's important, what's a threat, and what's just background noise.
Okay, so if the DMN is the self-narrative, the SN is the threat detector.
The threat detector and the resource allocator. It's intimately involved in allostatic regulation, that complex process the body uses to maintain stability by predicting and responding to stress.
And what happened to it?
It also showed a decreased internal connectivity post-intervention. And the magnitude of this decrease was even more pronounced than the DMN change, a p-value of 0.000003.
That's a huge effect.
It is. It suggests that the brain's threshold for what it considers urgent or salient was dramatically lowered. The hypervigilance, the constant scanning for threat was dialed way, way back.
I have to pause there and ask a skeptical question, because we're talking about massive changes in the brain's most central functions after only 1 week. Is the interpretation that the network is simply shutting down, or is it repurposing its energy?
That's an excellent point. And it's likely not a shutdown, but a shift in state. The internal communication within these self-centered networks decreases, which suggests they are less segregated and less focused on their own internal loop.
They're not just navel-gazing anymore.
Exactly. The study specifically highlighted connectivity reductions between the right posterior cerebellum and the medial prefrontal cortex, the MPFC.
And the MPFC is the part responsible for what?
For evaluating and judging information in the self-referential context. The network isn't turning off, it's stopping the process of making everything about me.
So the subjective feeling of transcendence is rooted in this measurable suppression of evaluative processing. Okay, so if the brain is no longer wasting resources on internal judgment and threat analysis, where does that energy go? The source suggests the entire architecture of the brain reorganizes itself globally.
This is where we use graph theory metrics to see the forest, not just the trees. We look at two concepts, modularity and global efficiency.
Okay, start with modularity. What is that?
Modularity measures the degree to which a network is segregated into distinct, isolated functional modules.
Like cliques.
Exactly like cliques. Think of a massive old-school corporate bureaucracy. Each department, HR, accounting, sales, is a highly modular clique. They are efficient internally, but they communicate poorly with other departments.
Okay, I can picture that. And the intervention did what to that modularity?
Meditation significantly decreased whole brain network modularity, both before and after the full retreat. The specialized cliques dissolved, the brain state became less segregated.
It's like the walls between the corporate departments came down and they started working together more fluidly.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the inverse happened with global efficiency.
Which means?
While the silos were dissolving, global efficiency, which measures how quickly and easily information can travel across the entire network, significantly increased. The change was enormous. It means the brain allowed for more efficient information flow across the entire network.
That is the signature of an optimally functioning network, isn't it? Less segregation means less internal competition or redundancy, and greater global efficiency means the data gets where it needs to go faster.
It is. It's like the brain transitioned from that slow, segregated bureaucracy into a fast, flexible, integrated startup in a single week.
It's a dynamic state, designed to process the present sensory environment without the heavy filter of self-reference or prediction.
And that leads to the final, beautiful neural signature, the trans-state signature.
Tell us about the trans-state signature.
So as the DMN and SN connectivity decreased, the researchers found only one functional connectivity increase that was observed during meditation post-intervention.
Just one.
Just one. And it was the enhanced link between the left insula and the posterior cingulate cortex, or PCC.
And why is that specific connection so significant?
The insula is the key region for integrating interoceptive awareness, the body's internal state, with emotional and cognitive processing. The PCC, while it's usually part of the DMN, has also been implicated in linking the sense of self with memory and emotion.
So you're linking body awareness to the self-network.
Exactly. And this specific connectivity increase is a previously reported hallmark of absorptive trance states. It signifies a highly integrated state where acute internal sensory awareness is coupled with a sense of transcendence or absorption. It is the objective neurological confirmation of the subjective mystical experience reported in the MEQ scores.
The brain is literally optimized to better listen to the body's data while simultaneously dissolving the self-narrative filter. Incredible. Before we leave the brain, what about the long-term meditators? Did they look different?
The comparison between novices and advanced practitioners was really insightful. Even at baseline, before anyone started the intervention, the advanced practitioners showed greater gray matter volume in the right superior parietal lobule.
And that's a region linked to what?
To spatial awareness and body representation.
So does that mean long-term meditation actually changes how the brain structurally organizes the physical sense of self?
That's the interpretation. While the 7-day retreat induced these massive functional changes, years of practice appear to create specific structural resilience and adaptation, particularly in how the brain localizes the body in space.
So it's not just function, it's structure.
It suggests that long-term dedication to these practices creates a structural foundation for altered states of consciousness. It definitely warrants much more investigation.
We've established that the brain's operating system underwent a radical, measurable update. But for this change to be stable and systemic, the body's chemistry has to support it. Did this neural overhaul send molecular signals down to the rest of the body? Let's start with enhanced neuroplasticity.
The answer is a definitive and robust yes. The study provides concrete, functional evidence that the intervention altered the circulating factors in the blood in a way that actively promotes nerve growth and repair.
The system is literally priming itself for rebuilding.
It is. And this is where those functional assays come into play. It's one thing to measure a protein in the blood, it's another to see it work.
So tell us about the neurite outgrowth assay. This is maybe the most elegant demonstration in the whole study.
I agree. Researchers took PC12 cells, which are neuroendocrine cells that respond to nerve growth signals, and they treated them with plasma collected from participants before and after the retreat.
And the result?
Post-intervention plasma caused these cells to exhibit significantly longer neurites compared to the pre-intervention plasma.
And just for clarity, neurites are the little projections that extend from the nerve cell body. They're the physical structures that become axons and dendrites. They're the scaffolding for new neural connections.
That's it. So in a lab dish, the plasma from the participants post-retreat created a biochemical environment that was measurably more conducive to nerve growth and connection formation. The body's circulating chemical profile had become, for lack of a better word, neuroplastic.
And what specific factors were driving this? The proteomic analysis points to the BDNF pathway.
Right. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's famous for its role in promoting the growth and survival of nerve cells. People call it miracle growth for the brain.
Fertilizer for the brain, yeah.
And the index for this pathway overall was significantly upregulated. Now, BDNF itself is often difficult to measure directly, but the downstream effectors showed undeniable signals.
Like which specific proteins?
Two really stood out. The first was SLI-TRK1. This protein acts as a kind of signal booster. It promotes excitatory synapse development and neurite outgrowth, and it increased significantly.
Okay. And the second one?
The second was NGFR, the nerve growth factor receptor, which trended upward.
Yeah.
It's the receiving mechanism for those growth signals.
So you have more signal and more receivers for the signal.
Exactly. And this convergence is so powerful. The functional assay shows longer neurites, and the proteomics shows the upregulation of the precise biological signaling factors required for that growth.
I find it unbelievable that a week of focused attention and belief restructuring changes the chemical makeup of our blood to the point where it actively promotes nerve growth in a petri dish. It implies that self-directed attention acts as a systemic primer for repair.
It reframes how we define health. Health isn't just the absence of disease. It's the dynamic capacity for self-repair and neuroplastic adaptation.
Let's pivot now to the energy system of the cell, metabolic reprogramming. This leads us to the most counterintuitive molecular finding in the whole paper, the glycolytic shift. This means the body changed how it burns fuel.
This is truly a cornerstone of the molecular shift. Post-intervention, the body cells showed a preference for glycolysis. That's a faster glucose-based pathway, and it was preferred over the slower, more efficient mitochondrial energy production.
Wait a second. If the body's optimizing, why would it switch to the metabolically less efficient pathway? Glycolysis produces far less energy, far less ATP per molecule of glucose than mitochondrial respiration. That seems like a strange definition of optimization.
That is the critical question, and the measurement technique first confirmed the shift. The real-time cellular metabolism assays show that post-intervention plasma induced a compensatory shift in human neuroblastoma cells.
Meaning what, exactly?
The basal glycolytic rate, the rate of instant, fast, glucose-fueled energy production, was significantly higher in cells treated with the post-retreat plasma. And at the same time, the basal mitochondrial respiration rate actually lowered.
So the body is switching to a kind of instant energy mode, a metabolic sprinter instead of a marathon runner. But why? Explain that efficiency trade-off.
You are correct. Mitochondrial respiration is slow and efficient. It's how you power long-term processes like growth and repair. Glycolysis, while inefficient in terms of ATP yield, is extremely fast. It can generate energy instantly without waiting for oxygen or the complex mitochondrial cascade.
What functional advantage does that speed provide to a deeply meditative, present-centered consciousness?
The interpretation here links right back to the brain state we discussed, that non-discursive, sensory-driven awareness. When you are operating free from self-referential prediction, when the DMN and SN are quieted, you are constantly taking in raw sensory data, and you have to react to the present moment without the filter of past experience or prediction.
And that requires an immediate, high-fidelity, high-speed energy supply.
I see. So if the brain is acting like a probabilistic predictor, anticipating what's coming, it can use the slow, efficient mitochondrial pathway because it's expecting what it will find.
But if the system is forced into a state of pure awareness, non-judgmentally accepting raw sensory data moment to moment,
it needs rapid, on-demand energy to process that unexpected reality.
that makes so much sense.
And the proteomic analysis confirmed it. The glycolysis index increased significantly, and so did key enzymes like ENO2, which is a neuron-specific enolase, and LDHA, lactate dehydrogenase A, which is crucial for quick anaerobic energy.
So it's not just a guess. The proteins back it up.
They do. It's an energy profile that prioritizes highly acute, responsive consciousness over long-term predictive metabolic efficiency. And this dynamic fast energy profile has also been observed in advanced Tibetan monks, which suggests it is a long-term biological adaptation to deep contemplative practice.
So the metabolic shift supports the neural shift. The body is fueling a more present, responsive mind. The brain is reorganized, the fuel system is reprogrammed. Now let's look at the body's internal pharmacy, specifically how this intervention activated the body's own healing compounds. The sources confirm the activation of the endogenous opioid system.
This is perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence supporting the success of the reconceptualization and open-label placebo components. The index for the endogenous opioid pathway was significantly upregulated.
And this pathway is responsible for producing our body's natural painkillers and mood elevators, right?
Yes, the dynorphins and the beta endorphins.
And the chemical assays confirmed actual increases in those molecules. It wasn't just the pathway, it was the product.
Yes. Specific ELISA tests confirmed significant increases for both beta endorphin and dynorphin. The statistical signals were powerful, especially for beta endorphin, with a p-value of 0.0002.
Wait, I need to push back on this. You're telling me that this massive engagement of the body's pain and pleasure system manufacturing its own internal opioids happened without deception?
That's right.
We just thought our way into manufacturing our own beta endorphins. Isn't that too simple?
It fundamentally challenges the traditional view of the placebo effect. The old model relied heavily on deception. You think you're getting a drug, so your brain anticipates it and releases endogenous opioids.
But here, participants knew they were engaging in a ritual.
They knew. Yet the physiological outcome was robust and sustained over the week.
So the hypothesis is that the reconceptualization component, those 25 hours of lectures designed to shift core beliefs about the mind's capacity to influence the body, served as a new, high-level prior expectation.
That's it exactly. The conscious belief restructuring changed the system's prediction about its own ability to heal. That new prior was potent enough to modulate endorphin and dynorphin levels in a sustained way, independent of any external chemical input or deception.
So it suggests that if we can consciously and sustainably cultivate the belief in our body's self-regulatory capacity, the chemistry follows.
It moves the placebo effect from being a vulnerability of the mind to being a controllable, self-directed mechanism of health.
That is a profound paradigm shift for non-pharmacological health strategies. Okay, let's move to the immune system. We usually look for a reduction in inflammation when we talk about healing interventions, but here they found a dual immune response. Both inflammatory and anti-inflammatory markers increased simultaneously. That sounds contradictory.
It does on the surface, but when you look at the specific proteins, the interpretation shifts from contradiction to dynamic repair. Both the inflammatory markers index and the anti-inflammatory markers index were significantly upregulated.
So why are both increasing at the same time?
The inflammatory drivers that increased significantly were things like S100A8 and CCL2. These are known as alarmins.
Alarmins.
Yeah, they're molecules released in response to cellular stress, damage, or rapid cellular turnover. They aren't signs of chronic disease inflammation. They are signals that say, a change is happening here. Mobilize the resources.
So they're indicating that the system is undergoing a massive, rapid transformation that requires intense resource allocation and cleanup.
Precisely. And in parallel, the anti-inflammatory markers like TGF-B1 and NF-kBIA were also trending upward. So the interpretation is that the body isn't entering a state of chronic inflammation, but rather a dynamic process of enhanced cellular turnover and repair.
So the system is being broken down and rebuilt quickly.
And the body's regulatory mechanisms are immediately stepping in to manage that rapid change, preventing runaway inflammation while maximizing healing.
It's the immune system managing the renovation of the self. Wow. Oh. Okay, let's look at the metabolic shifts beyond just glycolysis. The tryptophan metabolism pathway was significantly impacted.
It was. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid, famously known as the precursor to serotonin, which regulates mood, sleep, appetite.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. The pathway showed significant changes, specifically decreases in several metabolites, including L-tryptophan, tryptamine, and L-kynurenine.
And decreases in these metabolites often suggest a redirection of the pathway, right? Either it's being used faster or it's being shifted to produce something else. What does this suggest about the neurochemical environment?
It suggests a systemic shift in neurochemical resource allocation and potentially a more regulated state. Tryptophan is heavily involved in the gut-brain axis and immune regulation, so any sustained change here reflects a fundamental stability shift.
What about stress hormones?
Well, Cortisol levels, the main stress hormone, only showed a strong trend downward, which is typical for relaxation studies. But the top metabolites related to phenylalanine metabolism were prominent.
And phenylalanine is linked to catecholamines like dopamine and norepinephrine.
Yes, metabolites like phenethylamine were identified, which act as neurotransmitter storage and can enhance the release of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. It reinforces the idea that the entire system is promoting enhanced synaptic function and neurotransmission capacity.
It all connects. Finally, let's return to those cellular messengers, exosome-specific transcriptomics. What were these tiny communication packets telling other cells?
The analysis showed significant shifts in circulating exosome-specific RNAs, or xRNAs. When you analyze the function of these upregulated RNAs, they map directly to genes linked to synaptic function and neurotransmission.
For example,
For instance, they saw increases in xRNAs corresponding to genes like RABC1, SYN3, which is synapsin-3, and GRIK3, a glutamate receptor.
and synapsin-3 is crucial for regulating the release of neurotransmitters, and glutamate receptors are key for excitatory signaling in the brain.
Exactly. This is cellular-level evidence that reinforces everything we saw in the fMRI data. The functional analysis predicted upregulation in pathways related specifically to the serotonin and dopamine neurotransmitter release cycle.
So the mail confirms the phone call.
The communication packets confirm a system-wide boost in synaptic activity and neuroplastic potential. The transformation isn't just in the brain, it's being broadcast by the blood to every cell in the body.
The volume of data we have just covered it's staggering. From global brain reorganization and trance states to enhanced nerve growth factors, a glycolytic metabolic switch, and the non-deceptive activation of the body's opioid systems.
It's a lot to integrate.
So the researchers needed a method to connect all these disparate data streams, which is where machine learning comes in. How successful were the algorithms at finding a coherent, unified signature of this transformation?
The machine learning models demonstrated the coherence of the changes really beautifully. The models, specifically XGBoost and Random Forest, achieved an incredibly robust classification performance.
How robust?
They could predict whether a sample was taken pre- or post-intervention with an area under the curve, or AUC, of up to 0.90. And for classifying novice versus advanced meditators, the accuracy was even higher, reaching an AUC of up to 0.93.
An AUC of 0.93 is huge. That means it's a very accurate model. It suggests the intervention didn't produce random noise. It produced a coherent, systemic, and predictable biological signature.
That's the key insight.
So what were the specific features, the pieces of data that were most predictive of that post-intervention state?
And here's the cool part. The most powerful predictors spanned all the biological layers. It reinforces the idea that this was a systemic regulatory event, not just a localized brain change or a chemical change.
It wasn't just one thing.
It is everything together. Top features included amino acid metabolites like glyGlyph and 3-indolibutyric acid.
A tryptophan byproduct.
Right. And lipid signaling molecules like S1P, D18.1.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, those crucial connectivity differences we talked about earlier, like the relationship between the auditory network and the salience network, and the DMN and the SN.
So the shift in your central brain networks is inextricably linked to changes in your amino acid consumption and lipid signaling in the periphery. It's an axis change, not just a single point fix.
Precisely. If one data layer was sufficient, the AUC wouldn't be this high. The machine needed the full integrated picture to classify the transformation accurately.
And what did the machine learning tell us about the difference between the novices and those who have dedicated years to practice?
The classification between novice and advanced participants strongly emphasized metabolic and mitochondrial features. This suggests that long-term practice builds a deep, fundamental metabolic resilience.
So the experts have a different energy signature.
A more resilient one, it seems. Top discriminators included LDHA, that key enzyme for fast glycolysis we mentioned, ATP synthase ATP5PB, which is central to mitochondrial energy production, and sirtuin-2, which is involved in cellular energy processing and longevity.
So it's all about energy.
Energy, and also immune and stress proteins like FGF19 and interferon gamma. They were also highly predictive. It suggests that the foundational adaptation provided by experience is focused on efficient and flexible energy regulation and a dampened yet responsive stress and immune profile.
So the acute 7-day change is exciting, but years of practice solidify the body's energy infrastructure.
That's a great summary.
Now, we need to bridge the gap completely. We saw that the participants reported a deeper mystical experience. Were those subjective feelings truly tied to the hard biology identified by the machine?
Yes, and the correlations are undeniable. The MEQ scores correlated with specific molecular and neural markers. For example, at baseline, that amino acid metabolite 3-indolylbutyric acid correlated positively with higher MEQ scores.
A metabolic predisposition for mystical states. That's fascinating.
It is, isn't it? It suggests that certain peripheral metabolic markers might predispose individuals to transcendent experiences. Furthermore, the key reductions in network connectivity, for instance, between the dorsal attention network and the DMN, were inversely correlated with MEQ outcomes in the experienced meditators.
Meaning the bigger the drop in connectivity, the bigger the mystical experience.
The greater the experienced meditator could shut down that self-referential and attention-grabbing chatter, the deeper their reported mystical experience.
So the subjective feeling of self-dissolution and transcendent experience is tied both to a peripheral chemical marker and the central reorganization of the attention and self-reference networks. The feeling is real, and it is chemically and neurologically measurable.
And this systemic integration leads us to the most powerful theoretical framework for understanding this entire deep dive, the Bayesian brain framework.
Let's dedicate some time to this framework, as it really synthesizes all these moving parts. Explain the Bayesian brain model clearly for us.
Okay. The Bayesian brain framework posits that the brain operates fundamentally as a probabilistic predictor. It is constantly generating hypotheses about the world and your body, about what sensory data is likely to arrive next, and then it compares that prediction to the actual sensory input.
And the goal is to minimize the difference, the prediction error.
Exactly. So the brain doesn't just respond to data, it proactively predicts it.
Using what?
It uses past experiences, which we call priors.
Yeah.
These are your established beliefs, your learned associations, your memories. It uses all that to create this prediction. If the prediction is accurate, the brain saves energy. If there's a mismatch, the brain has to update its priors.
Okay. And this connects to the body how?
Crucially, these predictive regions don't just anticipate external events. They project copies down to the subcortical nuclei that regulate the body's energy needs. That process is called allostasis.
Allostasis. That's the complex regulation of biological stability. So if my high-level prior belief is that I am chronically stressed and unable to cope a maladaptive prior,
Your brain will predict a hostile environment and regulate your metabolism, your immune system, and your stress hormones, your allostasis accordingly, to match that prediction.
and that's the core problem this intervention sought to solve. Maladaptive priors lead to chronic prediction errors and dysregulated allostasis, which manifests as disease or dysfunction.
Whereas health, conversely, is defined by having flexible, adaptive predictions.
So how do the three techniques, reconceptualization, meditation, and the open-label placebo, synergistically rewrite this predictive code?
The authors propose they target 3 distinct levels of the predictive hierarchy.
Okay, start with the highest level, reconceptualization.
Reconceptualization acts on the high-level priors. It consciously and discursively shifts your fundamental beliefs about your mind-body construction. It tells the system, the body is capable of self-healing, and the mind is capable of influencing physical reality. It changes the foundation of the predictive model itself.
So it gives the system new philosophical permission.
Correct. Next, the open-label placebo ritual. This creates a powerful prediction error at a specific effective level. By engaging in a known healing behavior, the ritual, with a restructured belief system from the lectures.
The system anticipates a positive biological outcome.
Yes, that positive expectation, without the need for deception, creates a physiological state of readiness, the release of endogenous opioids, that profoundly mismatches the typical prediction of a chronically suffering or low-resource state. This mismatch opens the system up to new predictive paths.
It creates a moment of biological flexibility ready for the final input.
Which is the core practice, meditation. By focusing intensely on the present moment and cultivating non-judgmental awareness, it weakens the descending predictions themselves. When the DMN and SN connectivity decreases, the brain is essentially silencing the voice of the prediction mechanism.
It stops predicting and starts listening.
Exactly. It produces that state of pure awareness, free from the predicted self, allowing those maladaptive, outdated priors to be replaced by the rich, present-centered sensory and interoceptive data. The neuroplasticity and the glycolytic shift provide the biological support for this highly receptive, non-predictive state.
So the techniques are sequential and interdependent. They dismantle the old, rigid productive system and install a new, flexible, and adaptive one at the deepest biological and molecular level.
And that integration is what the machine learning validated, connecting the brain's predictive activity to the body's opioid release and metabolic efficiency.
This deep dive has provided an astonishing look into the neural and molecular blueprint of mind-body transformation. To summarize the key biological takeaways, a 7-day intensive intervention fundamentally altered the physical relationship between the brain and body. We saw network-level desegregation in the DMN and salience networks, indicating a measurable shutdown of the self-narrative and the chronic allostatic stress response.
We saw irrefutable evidence for enhanced neuroplastic potential, confirmed by plasma factors that literally caused laboratory nerve cells to grow longer neurites, driven by the BDNF pathway.
We also found a systematic metabolic shift toward fast glycolysis, a highly dynamic, energetic profile that supports acute, present-centered consciousness and is characteristic of advanced practitioners.
And perhaps the most paradigm-shattering finding was the non-deceptive conscious activation of the body's internal pharmacy, the endogenous opioid system, with significant increases in beta-endorphin and dynorphin. It suggests that core belief shifts can sustainably modulate pain and reward systems without the need for traditional placebo deception.
However, we do have to acknowledge the scientific context here.
We must, always. The study was observational, which means we cannot definitively isolate the contribution of each component, the meditation, the placebo, or the reconceptualization.
Or even just rule out the impact of generalized relaxation, standardized diet or group expectation.
Exactly. And the sample size was small, and there were variations in blood collection timing, which introduced potential confounds. So we cannot infer strict causality, and the generalizability is limited until larger controlled studies are performed.
But the magnitude and the breadth of the systemic changes across 4 distinct biological modalities, neural, proteomic, metabolomic, and transcriptomic, are an undeniable signal that the mind-body axis is a far more controllable and plastic system than conventional science often assumes.
Absolutely. Which leads to the final provocative thought. Given the significant non-deceptive increase in endogenous opioids found here, the question for future investigation becomes this. If we accept the brain as a powerful probabilistic predictor, which specific high-level beliefs about health and the mind's capacity to influence the body can we sustainably cultivate to optimize the body's self-mediated conscious pain relief and regulatory mechanisms?
So how do we intentionally build better priors?
How do we do that? This opens a tremendous, self-directed avenue for non-pharmacological health strategies that rely purely on your brain's inherent ability to rewrite its own predictive code.